Corporate training departments often measure success by how many employees complete a module and how high they score on the post-test. But a training program with perfect engagement metrics can still result in zero operational impact on the floor. This happens because of the information fallacy, the misconception that knowledge acquisition leads directly to human action. Instructional designer Julie Dirksen illustrates this using a classic cognitive metaphor. The human brain is split between a logical writer and an emotional, habit-driven elephant. Traditional corporate training focuses on the writer. We build extensive slide decks and complex rubrics designed for data transfer and logical deduction. The elephant, however, prioritizes personal, emotional experiences. It relies on whatever routine provides immediate safety and comfort, regardless of intellectual facts. There is a sharp distinction between the motivation to learn and the motivation to act. The writer's curiosity might drive an employee to learn a new concept, but only the elephant's response to its environment dictates whether they actually act on it. When we design a curriculum but ignore the friction in the physical workspace, the elephant lacks the drive to execute the new knowledge. The old habits are simply easier. To achieve sustainable return on investment, we have to move beyond information transfer and start engineering the behavioral environment. Take a look at this model of an employee in their natural working environment. The pathways surrounding them represent the flow of their daily tasks. When an employee tries to apply a newly trained behavior, they encounter systemic friction. These internal and external barriers stall the elephant, pushing the worker back toward their old routines. The first operational barrier is a broken feedback loop. If an employee tries a new workflow but receives delayed or vague feedback, they lose momentum. The second barrier is fuzzy goal setting. Telling an employee to be proactive provides no clear path. A trackable goal looks like a mandate to ask the team how you can help at the start of the Monday meeting. Then there is the physical environment. If the software processes or daily tools make the new behavior harder to execute than the old one, the training will fail. Systemic friction also manifests as psychological resistance. Changing a routine induces anxiety, causing the emotional brain to prioritize existing comfort over new risk. This creates a barrier of low confidence. Even if the writer understands the logic, a lack of belief in personal ability will override it. Over time, this compounds into learned helplessness. If an organization repeatedly rolls out complex initiatives that ultimately fail, employees become passive, assuming the new training will meet the same fate. Finally, we hit the structural barrier of misaligned incentives. You cannot expect employees to adopt behavior A if your structures actively reward behavior B. If these friction points are left unresolved in the workflow, even the most engaging, interactive e-learning module will fail to produce action. The reason old habits are so hard to break comes down to a cognitive bias known as hyperbolic discounting. This chart illustrates the mechanics of the bias. The sharp spike shows how heavily human beings overvalue immediate, small rewards. The flat line shows how we mathematically discount massive consequences if they are delayed. This is where standard training pitches fall apart. We try to sell long-term organizational ROI to the logical writer, but the emotional elephant demands instant gratification. To counter this, instructional design must engineer a localized, immediate win for the learner the very first time they attempt the behavior. A positive first experience proves to the emotional brain that the new action is safe.
This creates behavioral momentum and directly mitigates the anxiety of change. You can amplify that momentum by using social proof as a secondary immediate reward mechanism. When an employee sees peers successfully executing the new task, it provides visible evidence the behavior is safe, overriding their inherent distrust of corporate mandates. Promising a distant, macro-level benefit for the company does not motivate the individual. You must engineer instant, localized gratification for the user. You cannot expect an employee to instantly leap from an old behavior to a new one. Demanding an immediate jump triggers resistance from anyone unprepared for the shift. To manage this transition, Dirksen uses the ladder of change. This map represents the required scaffolding for any systemic behavioral intervention. Step 1 is awareness. Before asking for action, we establish the baseline need for the change using clear data and relatable narratives. Step 2 is prioritization. We provide impact statistics to help the learner mentally rank this new behavior above their established routines. Step 3 is readiness.
We remove the friction of starting by providing immediate physical resources right in the workflow, like templates or checklists. Step 4 is confidence. We break the final action down into highly achievable micro-steps to build early momentum and secure that critical first win. This operates within the zone of proximal development, the space between what a learner can do independently and what they can achieve with targeted guidance. As the learner gains autonomy, the training system must dynamically scale back its support structures, allowing the employee to rely on their own competence. Skipping any rung on this ladder overwhelms the learner's emotional bandwidth, which typically lead to the new behavior being abandoned. Once the external environmental scaffolding is in place, we focus on engineering the learner's internal drive. We can map this using self-determination theory. The first pillar is autonomy. The learner must have choice and control over how they apply their new skills. The second pillar is competence. By pacing the system to provide measurable micro-wins, we consistently prove to the learner that they are capable. The third pillar is relatedness. The system must create structural social connections and peer networks. To ensure we are building the right system, every intervention must first pass through the APPEASE diagnostic filter. This matrix evaluates 6 distinct criteria. First is acceptability. Is the behavior culturally viable here? Second is practicality. Can it be done with the tools we have? Third is effectiveness. Will this solve the root problem? Fourth is affordability. Do we have the resources to sustain it? Fifth is spillover effects. Will this break another process? And sixth is equity. Is this fair and accessible to all employee groups? Applying the APPEASE filter prevents an organization from wasting resources on training for behaviors that the physical system cannot support. When friction is removed, knowledge flows cleanly into action. Designing this requires answering 2 questions. First, does the learner have the capability, the skills and knowledge required? Second, do they have the opportunity? Does the environment provide the tools and support to execute the action? If the environment, the internal policies, and the social dynamics are hostile to the behavior, the training will fail, regardless of the curriculum's quality. The modern L&D professional coordinates the curriculum with the environment. Success depends on engineering a workspace that supports the knowledge being taught. True behavior change happens when the logical curriculum and the physical environment are engineered as a single, unified system.